So I started watching this Hajime no Ippo show pretty recently. I've always been aware of it, and I've always been aware of how positively, how highly people speak of it. But it was sort of like The Sopranos to me, which I know you're thinking, like, what does that mean? It's sort of like The Sopranos to me, where everyone would say, oh, Hajime no Ippo, oh, The Sopranos, it's really good. But they would never say why it's really good. They would just sort of say, they would essentially answer like, oh, the expectation is that you know and I know it's very good. And surprise, surprise, just like watching The Sopranos, you really quickly realize, oh, it is really good, but the people who tell you about it seem to just not have watched it. They've just accepted it as culturally relevant, right? And the reason I say that is because I'd never really been told why it's so good. And I know you're probably looking at what I'm going to title this video, sort of talking about masculinity in a vacuum. And the reason I want to talk about masculinity is the thing that Hajime no Ippo says and the way in which it sets itself apart from like almost every anime I've ever watched is that it's one of the realist, it's very authentic in the way it shows community and friendships and the building of these friendships, and how something like sports, but not really even sports, it doesn't have to be boxing. Boxing is just the vehicle that they use to tell a story of community, of belonging. And I found myself, I'm not gonna lie, I be getting misty-eyed watching Ippo. And I know you're like, you hear that and you're like, well, it's just an anime about boxing, why are you getting misty-eyed? And I swear it's not something that happens often. I mean, I've watched Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, Jujutsu Kaisen, and nothing at all. And there's just this thing that modern shonen does a lot of times where it's like, isn't this sad? Isn't, you know, when you read Berserk, isn't it sad that a sad thing that you know is sad, that is really intense, is happening? And it's like, yeah, I know that you're trying to evoke this emotion from me because you're very pointedly putting something sad in your story. When, you know, Junpei dies in Jujutsu Kaisen, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's sad, but really I don't know Junpei, like, not as like me personally, but like as a character, he's not really given a lot of time. So even though the story wants me to feel as though this is a really sad moment, it just doesn't land as effective. What Hajime no Ippo does, and what I found myself reacting to, I guess, is that I'll be watching it and they'll just have these moments which are so pure, so honest, so human a lot of the time. And you notice I'm not really giving direct examples. The reason why is I think that if you're hearing this and this sounds interesting, you should go watch it, because Hajime no Ippo, The Fighting Spirit, which is the version I'm watching, is I'm almost 50 episodes in right now. And pacing is great. It feels like they only show what's relevant. Are there jokes that have aged like poorly? Obviously, there's some, boys will be boys antics that go on that are here and there, but they don't really. I mean, they're of its time, right? They only really serve to sort of ground the characters because it seems so realistic. A lot of times people talk about masculinity as this thing that is so easily defined. You know, I was watching a lecture by his name slips my mind, but he was a well-known black lecturer in the 80s who was talking about the family unit and the role of boys when as they're being raised versus what is expected of them. And he said that agriculturally, we've left the agricultural age, which means we're not really doing extended families anymore. Instead, we're doing the nuclear family, which came about because of industry. As money became more accessible to different parties, we looked away from the extended family home. And you see this a lot, right? So what I think is the most interesting thing about Hajime no Ippo is that it sets out as one, this fractured family. His father is deceased or missing from the picture, what have you. And instead of positioning him, and this is where the rhetoric sort of loses itself for me, where that lecturer will say, well, a woman can't raise a man, like Ippo. And it's it never, that sort of thing never really jived with me, because it places this expectation solely on like this male figure. What instead happens with Ippo is he is raised just as well by his mother, and he holds a lot of value in his mother, and we're never given any sort of misgivings about her or like that she's done a poor job. We see that Ippo is a fine young man going into his late high school years. The thing that these male figures in his life, though, once he starts boxing, present is just a sense of extended community, that extended family that he finds within the Kamigawa boxing gym, right? It's not that she was lacking, it's that children need more than just one person. It doesn't matter if it's a father or a brother or an uncle or a trusted family friend. This thing that is so routinely missing from the lives of young men that you see all the time. Why do you think people go on Twitter and they bait tweet and they power scale and they, fandom daughter or, shipping daughter and power scaling son and all these things? People are just looking for a sense of community ultimately, right? They're not looking for the privilege of being famous or anything. They're looking for a sense of belonging. And I just find myself as I get older just watching things like Ippo, and I see not a perfect picture of what like a family structure looks like. I don't see them being nice, like unrealistically nice all the time. They're so well written to just be guys being guys, and I think it's refreshing. It's refreshing, and the way that they love each other very clearly, in this platonic way, in this familial way, in this found family way, the way that they support each other. Miyata, who is sort of like the rival character, isn't this character like Sasuke who, you need to bring back from the other village, from leaving to the Akatsuki and to joining Hebi and all these things. You don't need him to be this like emo character. Instead, Miyata is a character who was a kid when he met Ippo and wants to engage with him, because the veil of sports offers you this shared closeness. And it's one of those things where if you're on the younger side, I would really suggest you watch Ippo. Maybe it'll awaken something in you. Maybe you'll get into some communities or groups that you thought weren't really your bag. But like I said, the reason I'm not really talking specifics right now is I kind of just want people to have the raw experience. But it has been an endlessly impressive anime, to the point where I would say that music, animation quality, especially during the fights where they really turned it up, the pacing, like I said, it feels like of the 40 something, near 50 episodes I've watched in a row, I've felt like they've all been pretty relevant. This is a channel where I talk about Dragon Ball things. This is a channel where I talk about Dokkan. I found myself realizing that not only is Ippo one of the best anime packages I've ever watched, like this year, it's one of the best anime packages I've watched, period. Like, and I don't mean this as like Ippo versus Dragon Ball, or Ippo versus Bleach, or Ippo versus JJK, or Ippo versus Demon Slayer. I don't think those shows as animated projects, as packages, hold up to how like needed it feels that I like watch the next Ippo episode. It is enthralling, it's like enchanting, it manages to invoke these feelings that are raw and genuine, and they don't feel like every single time, oh no, we've killed the demon in Demon Slayer, now we have to hear its backstory even though no one cared before, right? Like, it's just these tricks that modern anime do to try to get you to feel like, oh, I'm so sad for them. Instead, it's just like, these are people going about their lives and you feel it. There's a delinquent character named Umezawa in this show that is so interesting. The turns that he takes, you wouldn't see them coming. And as you meet him in high school and as he goes to his adulthood, it's just like you know, you're left thinking about like the role of the school, like bully, quote unquote, and what's left for them after they move on from that position, right? Like there's an entire life to live thereafter. It's definitely a series that is, like I said, it's passionate. One of the things I haven't even mentioned is it shows such care, especially from a Japanese like creator. And you might be like, oh, what does that mean? I mean, from a Japanese creator who has their own biases, who has their own, you know, misgivings, just like everywhere in the world, like to show such respect to these, you know, black athletes and, you know, white athletes and Asian athletes, like it's such, you read it and it's like no one is just like, especially for the time it was created in, like this is probably coming from like the 80s and 90s. You know, Ippo being made in an era that really wasn't kind to these people of color, especially, you know, with how nationalist, you know, Japan and America and what have you can be. Like the way it's just spoken with such reverence, these like great athletes who did great things and who were not only physically gifted but like intelligent in their approach to this thing that everyone in this shared space is so passionate about. I don't know, it's remarkable. It's, if you've ever been told like, oh, you should watch Ippo, I'm sure all of you have. I was my entire life. I bit the bullet, and I mean, it's phenomenal. It really is. I can't wait to stop this and go watch another episode. I'll be at the gym and I'll be thinking of Ippo. I'll be, you know, finishing an episode and I'm thinking about like this rare sense of belonging that Ippo inspires. I think that, I don't know, it really does encapsulate so much of the struggle that young people are going through right now. And I don't even say young men, I just mean young people are going through right now, especially in the age of the internet. People are going out less. People are forming less of these lasting bonds. Everyone's just like, well, you know, it's the internet. So somehow we've ended up in a space where everyone makes the internet their entire life, and then also tells themselves that the internet doesn't matter. So not only is this their entire life, but the people online don't matter, so there's no actual stakes there. So they float between friend groups, they float between communities, they float between all these spaces just looking for attention instead of looking for anything effective. When I watch Ippo, I'm reminded of how important it is to actually make these connections, to actually talk to people, to actually share interests that matter, and most importantly, how important it is to see those older than you or younger than you and come at that with a level of understanding and connection rather than cynicism, which is so prevalent in our current society, right? I mean, X is the everything happens to fucking den of cynicism, right? Everyone is a little more cynical nowadays, and I don't know, it reminds me of being young and getting into fighting games, and, you know, the fighting game community being my thing, or getting into lifting and lifting being my thing, right? It's just like, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful show. I'd highly recommend it. I think that it's been a long time since anything has made me like misty-eyed just like randomly. Like I'm one of those people, it's not like I don't watch things that are heavy. Sopranos did it to me. Sopranos is heavy. Sopranos is definitely a show for adults, but if you're younger, you're looking for something a little more accessible, Ippo is great. It manages to land a lot of the inert things that modern shonen especially is doing for me, where I'll be watching a show and it's like, by the way, we're playing the sad music, you should be sad now, remember guys. And actually, I guess this is like a lasting point. I think the thing that shows like how masculinity has changed especially is that, you know, Solo Leveling had that moment where what's his name, is it Sunwoo or something like that? I'm sorry, it's been a bit since I watched it. Either way, it had that scene where he's crying because he finally, you know, takes care of his mother and she's up. And he's crying, and then people online were like, my goat has lost all of his aura. And just imagine that. Like, compare that to Ippo, who his mother is like a bedrock. She's so strong. She presents qualities that we would find to be, you know, quote unquote masculine by taking care of the household, by doing a menial, laborious, hard work job. like not in an office, she's doing manual labor. But even if she was doing an office job, right, it's just she's doing what she needs to so that she can present a home for him to come back to, and the ability for him to follow his dream, boxing. And he respects her, and if anything happened to her, he would drop boxing entirely, because he understands that, you know, being a man means having this hold over your family, you know, actually respecting this foundation. You know, someone does right by him, he does right by them. And I just think about that messaging, and then I think about when, you know, someone cries in Solo Leveling, and it's like, oh, his aura's gone, and it's like, we are doomed, man. Like, if that's like the reaction, I don't know. I can see two characters, you know, taking care of their mother, but one of them is just so much more rich and full and interesting and earned. Ippo is a show that just feels earned. So yeah, a bit of a rambly one. If you like this video, subscribe to join the club. We all gonna make it, and peace.